You want to live your life like a king, don't you? You want to stand tall with dignity, authority, and power. But let me ask you something. Do you understand what it truly means to live like a king? Because I can tell you right now that it is not about luxury, comfort, or self-indulgence. It is not about what you can accumulate, what you can display, or how you can make your life more pleasant for yourself. No, true kingship is something far greater, far more profound, and it begins with something that far too many people today are unfamiliar with: responsibility. I am not speaking of the kings you see on the covers of magazines or in the movies. I am not speaking of those who live for themselves, those who indulge in their desires, those who play the part of royalty in front of others but are empty inside. I'm speaking of true kingship, the kind that demands sacrifice, the kind that calls you to live for a purpose greater than your own comfort or pride. If you want to live your life like a king, then understand this. A king lives for something beyond himself. A king leads, serves, and protects. A king sacrifices himself for those he rules over. And the crown that a king wears is not one of gold and jewels, but one that is heavy with the weight of the responsibility of his people. You see, too many of us have a warped understanding of what it means to live with authority. We think it's about power over others, making others bow down to us, or taking what we can for ourselves. But I tell you, that is the path to destruction. That is not the life of a true king. That is the life of a fool, a man who is driven by his desires, his fleeting passions, and his own lust for power. True kingship is not a quest for self-glory. It is a life of service, discipline, and unwavering commitment to truth. Do you know what it takes to be a king? You must be willing to endure hardship, to suffer in ways that others cannot even begin to understand. You must be willing to stand for what is right when everyone else is too afraid to speak up. You must be willing to make the difficult decisions, to do the hard work, and to fight the battles that others shy away from. A king does not run from his responsibilities. He does not shrink back when things get hard. A king faces the truth no matter how painful it may be. A king stands firm even when the world around him is crumbling. You cannot live like a king if you are not willing to be disciplined. You cannot live like a king if you are not willing to get your hands dirty in the trenches of life. You cannot live like a king if you are not willing to make sacrifices that others are too selfish to make. A king does not live for himself. A king lives for the greater good. And the greater good is not your personal happiness or your own fleeting comfort. It is the advancement of truth, righteousness, and justice. You cannot lead others to greatness if you are not willing to first lead yourself in the ways of righteousness. A king must walk with integrity. He must stand firm in his values, and he must lead by example. Look around you. The world is full of people who want to be kings but are unwilling to pay the price. They want the glory, the accolades, the admiration, but they are not willing to do what it takes to earn it. They want the respect of others, but they are unwilling to give the respect that others deserve. They want to live like kings, but they are living like fools. You cannot be a king if you do not have a vision, a purpose, and a mission. A king does not wander aimlessly through life, hoping that things will somehow fall into place. A king has a plan, and he works relentlessly toward that plan, day in and day out. This is the truth, and it is a truth that too many people ignore. The only way to live your life like a king is to live with purpose and discipline. You must commit yourself to the pursuit of excellence. You must strive to grow, to learn, to improve, and to serve others. You must seek out wisdom, and you must put that wisdom into action. Kings are not made by their crowns. They are made by their actions, their decisions, and their ability to lead with integrity and courage. If you want to live like a king, you must first be willing to put the work in. You must be willing to sacrifice your comfort, your time, and even your pride for the greater purpose that you are called to fulfill. But the problem is that too many of you are living for the wrong things. You are living for your own fleeting pleasures, your own selfish desires. You are living for the approval of others, for the praise and recognition that come from the world. But I tell you this, if you live for the applause of men, you will never live like a king. You will live like a slave to the opinions of others. You will be a prisoner to the shifting tides of the world's standards, forever chasing after what will never satisfy you. If you want to live like a king, you must live for a purpose that transcends this world. You must live for something that is eternal, something that cannot be taken away from you. You must live for truth, for justice, and for the glory of something greater than yourself. You must live as though your actions matter, as though your decisions have consequences beyond your own life. Because they do. Your life is not just about you. It is about what you leave behind, what you build, and what you invest in. So I ask you again, do you want to live like a king? Then understand that a king does not live for himself. A king lives for a purpose, and he pours out his life to fulfill that purpose. He lives with honor, with dignity, and with strength. He leads by example, and he serves those who follow him. He is willing to endure hardship, to suffer for the sake of others, and to make the tough decisions when others falter. He does not shy away from the hard work, from the sacrifice, or from the weight of responsibility. And above all, a true king lives in pursuit of a greater glory, a glory that transcends his own. The path to kingship is not easy, but it is the path of true greatness. The road will be hard, and there will be times when you feel like giving up. There will be times when you feel the weight of your responsibilities bearing down on you. But let me tell you something. There is no greater honor than to live for something greater than yourself. There is no greater satisfaction than to know that your life has meaning, that your actions have significance, and that you have lived in such a way that those who follow you are better off for it. So live like a king, live with purpose, live with integrity, live with honor, and above all, live with the knowledge that your life is not your own, that you are called to something far greater than yourself. That, my friend, is how you live like a king. This is just a portion of the speech. Would you like me to continue? Living like a king is not about seeking comfort, luxury, or self-indulgence. It is about embracing responsibility, serving others, and making sacrifices for a greater purpose. A true king lives not for personal gain but for the good of others, standing firm in integrity, wisdom, and discipline while leading by example. To live like a king, you must have a vision, a mission, and a commitment to something greater than yourself. Truth, justice, and a higher calling. Kingship is about making decisions that reflect long-term values and striving for greatness through self-discipline, purpose, and the pursuit of eternal glory rather than fleeting worldly approval. Living like a king is a concept that many desire to understand, but few grasp the full weight of. We look at kings in the world, those who wear crowns made of gold, sit on thrones, and command legions, and we see the glimmer, the luxury, the power, and the prestige. But the true nature of kingship goes far beyond these external trappings. To live like a king is not about what you can get for yourself, the accolades you can collect, or the comforts you can indulge in. True kingship is not about living for personal pleasure or worldly applause. It is about living for something much greater, and that something is responsibility. Responsibility for those entrusted to your care, responsibility to uphold what is good and right, and responsibility to make sacrifices that will build something eternal. True kingship requires responsibility, and it is a responsibility that is not taken lightly. The true king does not shy away from his duties, no matter how burdensome or difficult they may be. In fact, the true king embraces them, knowing that his actions have consequences that go far beyond his own life. When a king rules over a people, he is not simply a figurehead who enjoys the privileges of authority and command. No, the true king is one who understands that his role is to serve those entrusted to him, to protect them, to guide them, and to make decisions that affect their lives and their futures. A king who rules without understanding the responsibility he bears is not a king at all. He is a tyrant. Consider the weight of responsibility a king must carry. His decisions shape the destiny of his nation, and his actions, or lack of actions, determine the well-being of his people. The king's choices affect the lives of those under his reign in profound ways. He is responsible for the peace, prosperity, and security of his land. He is responsible for justice, for protecting the weak and the oppressed, for making sure that the rule of law is just, and for ensuring that his people are treated with dignity and respect. He must balance the interests of many different groups, make difficult decisions that may not always be popular, and sacrifice his own comfort for the good of the people. The burden of responsibility is not a light one. It is not something that can be carried without deep conviction, strength, and determination. True kings do not avoid responsibility when it gets hard. They lean into it. They face it head on, knowing that the weight they carry will ultimately define their legacy. The crown they wear is not a crown of gold or jewels. It is a crown that weighs heavily with the choices they make, the people they serve, and the legacy they leave behind. But responsibility does not exist in isolation. With responsibility comes the necessity of sacrifice. A king cannot lead a kingdom, fulfill his duties, or care for his people without making sacrifices. These sacrifices are not simply sacrifices of time or energy, they are sacrifices of self. A true king is willing to give up his own comforts, his own desires, and sometimes even his own safety for the good of those he rules over. This sacrifice is not something that comes easily, and it is not something that is done for personal glory or recognition. It is a sacrifice that is made out of love and commitment to a higher purpose. True kings are not driven by selfish ambition, but by a sense of duty and devotion to something greater than themselves. Consider the sacrifices that are demanded of a king. He must sacrifice his time, his personal life, and sometimes even his desires. He may not be able to rest when he is weary. He may not be able to enjoy the same freedoms as those he serves, and he may have to make decisions that weigh heavily on his conscience. He is constantly required to give of himself in ways that others may never see or appreciate. He sacrifices his own desires for the needs of his people. He sacrifices his own comfort to make hard decisions that will lead to the greater good. And he sacrifices his own safety when it is necessary to defend those who are vulnerable, even at great personal risk. In this sense, true kingship is a life of constant self-denial. The king cannot afford to live for himself. If he does, he will fail in his duties and those who follow him will suffer. A king who is focused solely on his own desires, pleasures, and comfort will not be able to lead with the integrity and strength that true kingship demands. Instead, he must live in a way that reflects the highest standard of selflessness and service. He must put the needs of others before his own, constantly thinking of how he can serve, how he can lead, and how he can protect. This is a difficult life. It is not the kind of life that is glamorous or easy. It requires discipline, fortitude, and a deep understanding of what it means to serve. The life of a true king is not about what he can take, but about what he can give. It is about pouring out his life for others, making sacrifices that may never be recognized or rewarded, and living each day with the knowledge that his actions will either build up or tear down the kingdom he has been entrusted with. True kings are not kings because they are powerful or influential. They are kings because they are willing to serve, to lead with humility, and to make sacrifices for the good of others. But make no mistake, sacrifice is not just about giving up things. It is not merely about letting go of comforts or pleasures. Sacrifice is about a deeper level of commitment. It is about giving of yourself in such a way that you are no longer living for yourself, but for something much greater. True kings are not concerned with their own success or fame. They are concerned with the welfare of those they lead. They are willing to give up their own reputation, their own desires, and their own comfort in order to protect, defend, and nurture those who depend on them. When we speak of sacrifice, it is important to understand that true sacrifice is often painful. It is not always a pleasant thing to give up what you want for the sake of others. It is not always easy to make decisions that will bring hardship, discomfort, or risk. But it is in the act of sacrifice that a king demonstrates his true worth. A king who is unwilling to sacrifice for the good of his people is not a king at all. He is simply a man who wears a crown and takes up space. But a king who is willing to give his life, his comfort, his time, and his heart for others is a true king, one who will be remembered for the way he led and the sacrifices he made. And there is something else that is crucial to true kingship: consistency. A king does not just make one great sacrifice and call it a day. He is called to a life of continual sacrifice, to a life of ongoing service, and to a life of unwavering responsibility. A true king does not change his course based on what is easy or convenient. He remains steadfast in his duties, even when the road is long, even when the pressure is great, and even when others would prefer he take the easy way out. The true king does not grow weary of doing good. He presses on, always looking toward the future and the legacy he will leave behind. In fact, it is in the face of hardship, opposition, and difficulty that a king's true character is revealed. It is easy to lead when everything is going well, when the people are content, and when prosperity is abundant. But it is in the hardest of times, when there is little hope, when the people are suffering, and when the future seems uncertain, that the true king shows his strength. He stands firm, he makes the tough decisions, and he sacrifices himself for the good of those who rely on him. A king does not abandon his post when times get tough. He steps up, he faces the challenges, and he leads through the storm. To live like a king is to live with the understanding that you are called to a life of responsibility and sacrifice. It is not a life of ease or luxury. It is not a life of personal indulgence or self-centeredness. It is a life of service, of self-denial, and of unwavering commitment to the good of others. And it is a life that is defined by the legacy you leave behind, a legacy built not on what you took, but on what you gave. True kingship is not about ruling over others with an iron fist. It is about living with humility, serving others with love, and making sacrifices for a purpose far greater than yourself. So if you truly desire to live like a king, understand this. You must be willing to accept responsibility for your actions, and you must be willing to sacrifice everything for the good of others. You must lead by example, live with integrity, and serve with humility. Only then will you understand what it means to live like a true king. To live like a king, you must understand that kingship is not a title to be flaunted, nor is it a life of luxury, comfort, or self-absorption. True kingship is defined by purpose, not by personal gain. It is not about seeking the admiration of the masses, the accumulation of wealth or power, or living to satisfy one's own desires. The true kingship, the kind that changes the course of history and impacts lives in ways that last beyond a single lifetime, is defined by a clear purpose and a commitment to service. It is about living for something far greater than oneself, something that transcends the limits of personal ambition and focuses on the well-being of others, the greater good, and the advancement of a noble cause. Too often we are taught to think about kingship in terms of external trappings, the crowns, the thrones, the palaces. And indeed, there are moments when these symbols of authority and power may seem impressive, but the real weight of kingship lies not in these outward symbols, but in the deep commitment to purpose and service that is required to live the life of a true king. If you seek to live as a king, you must first know your purpose and be ready to serve others with everything you have. Purpose is the very foundation of kingship. A king without purpose is like a ship without a rudder, lost, aimless, and drifting. A king must have a vision, a mission, and a clear understanding of what he is meant to accomplish. This purpose must be rooted in truth and justice, in the pursuit of what is right, and in the well-being of the people under his care. It cannot be a self-serving purpose driven by personal ambition or greed. A true king understands that his life is not his own, and he has been given the responsibility of leading others toward a greater good. Whether he is ruling a nation, leading a family, or simply guiding a group of people in his community, his purpose must be one that seeks to elevate those he leads, not himself. Living with purpose means making decisions based on a vision of what is right and what is best for others. It means seeking wisdom and counsel in all matters, and always weighing every action against the higher calling of leadership. A true king does not make decisions based on what is easiest for him or what will bring him the most accolades. He makes decisions based on what is best for the people he serves, even when those decisions are difficult, unpopular, or personally costly. One of the defining characteristics of a king is his ability to see the bigger picture. He does not get caught up in the trivial or the momentary. He understands that his actions today will affect the future, and he acts with foresight and wisdom. He leads with a sense of urgency, knowing that time is precious and the decisions made today will ripple through generations. A true king does not live only for the present moment, but for the long-term good of his people, knowing that he is called to leave a legacy that will endure long after his reign has ended. A king must be clear about his mission, for without clarity of purpose, he will easily be led astray. In a world that constantly pulls us in 1,000 different directions, it is all too easy to lose sight of what truly matters. The true king, however, is unwavering in his commitment to his mission. He knows that he is not called to serve himself, but to serve others. His purpose is not about acquiring power or glory for himself. It is about ensuring that his people are protected, provided for, and guided toward flourishing. Whether he is leading a nation, a family, or even a business, the true king's purpose is to lead with integrity, wisdom, and a heart devoted to service. To serve with purpose is to understand that leadership is not about being served, it is about serving others. The concept of service is woven deeply into the fabric of kingship. The king serves those he leads just as much as he leads them. This service is not always glamorous or immediately rewarding. It often requires humility, sacrifice, and the willingness to put the needs of others before one's own. But service is what separates a true king from a tyrant, a leader who demands loyalty for personal gain from one who earns it through selfless service. A king who serves others recognizes that his power and authority are not for his own benefit, but for the benefit of those who look to him for guidance. His strength lies not in his ability to command or to control, but in his ability to lead with compassion, wisdom, and integrity. A true king uses his authority to protect and to uplift, not to oppress or exploit. The greater his power, the greater his responsibility to serve others, for power without purpose quickly becomes corrupt. Service is not limited to moments of crisis or moments when people are in need. A true king serves his people every day through every decision he makes. He serves through his actions, his words, and his example. He leads by showing others how to live with integrity, with honor, and with compassion. A king does not ask of his people what he is unwilling to give himself. If he asks them to make sacrifices, he must be the first to make those sacrifices. If he expects loyalty, he must first show loyalty. If he demands justice, he must be just in all his dealings. One of the most challenging aspects of kingship is the ability to balance purpose and service. It is all too easy for a king to become consumed by the demands of leadership, to become so focused on his mission that he loses sight of the people he serves. A true king, however, understands that his mission is not separate from the well-being of his people. It is intertwined with it. He serves because he is on a mission, and he pursues that mission not for his own glory, but for the flourishing of others. To live with purpose means making choices that align with that mission. It means not compromising on values or integrity, even when it is difficult. The true king's purpose drives everything he does. Every word, every action, every decision is made with his higher calling in mind. His service to others is the manifestation of that purpose. When he serves, he does so with a heart full of conviction, knowing that each act of service is an investment in the people, in the future, and in the kingdom he is entrusted to lead. It is crucial to understand that purpose and service are not separate from one another. They are two sides of the same coin. Purpose without service is nothing but an empty ambition. It is a vision that lacks the ability to impact the world around it. Service without purpose is merely activity for activity's sake. It is work without meaning, a constant flurry of motion that leads nowhere. The two must work together to create a life of true kingship. A king's purpose is his guiding light, and his service is the means by which that purpose is fulfilled. True kingship, then, is not about what you get out of life, but about what you give. It is about dedicating yourself to something far greater than personal pleasure or temporary success. A true king lives for a higher calling, one that is rooted in the well-being of others. He serves others not for recognition or reward, but because it is his duty and his privilege to do so. He understands that his purpose is to lead those under his care toward a greater good, to guide them toward righteousness, justice, and truth. His service is the expression of that purpose, and it is the means by which he fulfills his calling as a king. Living like a king means living with purpose, and it means living with a heart dedicated to serving others. The true king does not live for himself, but for the greater good. His life is one of constant service, of selflessness, and of sacrifice. His purpose is to elevate others, to protect them, and to guide them toward a better future. And it is in the pursuit of this noble purpose that true kingship is realized. Without purpose, without service, there is no kingship. But when these two are combined, the result is a life of integrity, honor, and influence that changes the world.